if you work outdoors and you got really gnarly, bristly fingers, you're probably not going to like McFly egg foam, because it snags if you even blink at it. It'll snag on a rough nail or whatever. But the advantages of using it, which I'll explain, outweigh that. We have Joe Avila with us. This is a new pattern. We're going to add that to the YouTube site like we did the root beer midge. And we have another new fly that will be recording when Ron does his, I think it's called a rainbow midge. We got that one coming. So just as an introduction, some of you may not have seen Joe very much. We're going to try and do a couple things different here. Joe is trying to record me, and I want to, I'm going to try and show you some stuff. All right, this little pattern up here on the screen is an example of an egg pattern, and it uses McFly foam. One of the things that you want to try and do is have what they call a blood sac as part of this pattern. And it's a little tricky how you get that blood sac in, and we're going to talk about that. But this is on a size 12 hook. I really like tying these on one size smaller. And I tied one. I'll show it to you. I also would probably recommend, this is on a 14. And this has added a bead. A lot of them have a bead as part of the pattern. If you go on YouTube, you're going to find a multitude of ways of tying this thing. And I've gone through several of them, and I've opted for the way we're going to tie it today. It makes the most sense for me. I have come up with, I don't know where I got this, probably off somebody else's YouTube site, but this, come on, focus. There. This little pattern here uses a couple of homemade tools. This is what I call the egg yarn dispenser, and it started, and then you end up with the length that'll be a pretty good length for either a 14 or a small 12 size hook. And now you got your material ready, and you can use this pen tool to tie that onto your hook. But we did this last year, so it ought not to be totally new to everybody. I talked about that. Now you can tie a perfectly good egg pattern with that egg yarn. It will tie okay, but it doesn't have this stuff is foam, and it cinches up really nice and tight. The egg yarn doesn't cinch up like that, and it's when the beauty of this tool is when you have this cut, you're going to lay that right on the hook, and the key to a good egg pattern is when you tie that on your hook, you've got to have the first couple of wraps exactly on top of each other. Trying to do that with that egg yarn is hit and miss. That stuff is super, super slick, and the thread doesn't attach like it does to this foam. So that's a plus there. Another advantage of the McFly foam is that if your egg pattern, when you finish it, if it's not a perfectly round like you'd like it, or it's a little bare on the bottom, this McFly foam picks out with one of your dauber tools. It picks out very easily with one of those. If it gets a little too fuzzy, then it's very easy to trim. You'll find that a pair of really good scissors is a plus. One other thing I want to show you, I'm going to try and tie one here. For the newcomers, trust me, just watch the first time. You may have trouble keeping up, and I will tie another one or two, however many you want me to tie, to make it work. So I'm going to...
How long is your monofilament glue on your pool?
I've got about 6 inches. You just double it up, and that makes about 6 inches. You want enough, I would put maybe 14 or 15 inch. Monofilament's cheap. And then you want enough at your knot end that you can manipulate it to tie the knot.
Okay.
And
so the glue does not attach the knot to the wood. The glue is strictly for the knot.
I just put it on top of the knot and make sure I got some on the wood. If you want to get really cool about this, you could do a double knot, put a knot below the dowel, and then one on top. But the one below will want to suck into the wood. I've tried that, and that's why I only use one knot.
So why not just take the loop and put it around the dowel? It goes through the hole, it already has a loop, you take the loop and put the dowel in the middle of that.
Because you want a big knot that's not going to go through the hole you drilled in the dowel. You want that knot to double or triple that knot.
The loop won't allow it to go through either.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think you're understanding what she's saying.
You're saying tie a loop, tie it off.
So the dowel's here and there's a hole through it.
Uh-huh.
You feed your loop through there, now you have a loop. The dowel's sitting right here, right? You take that loop and you actually...
Oh, yeah, you can do it that way too. Yeah, yeah,
Cinch it.
yeah. Either way. All right. Since you probably would want your blood sac color to kind of match your thread. I don't have any red McFly foam, but I've got a darker color, and I'm a believer red's not a bad color on any fly. So I'm going to be laying my thread base. And I probably am not going to want to go past about the halfway point on my hook. And I'm going to get rid of my tag end thread. And I'm going to go back to where I think I want to tie in. And I'm looking at that. I'm trying to visualize what half of my egg pattern, how thick it's going to be. And right about there, half is going to go pretty close to the eye and half's going to go back behind. So I'm going to tie a little half hitch right where I want to tie on. I do that because once you start cinching down your egg pattern, the McFly foam, that first wrap is going to want to slip if you don't have it tied on. So I'm looking at this. I'm going to see if I can't maybe squeeze out just a little bit more. And notice I've got my blood sac right on the top. It's just one strand. I'm going to lay that maybe even a little bit toward me, and I'm going to make one wrap, pull that tight, make that second wrap, pull that tight, and now I'm going to try and lift this up, and I'm going to try to make a wrap or two right up against the base of my egg, and then I'm going to try and do the same thing in front. And then I'm going to bring my thread up front, and I'm going to half hitch it there. I'm going to whip finish it off, so I'm essentially pretty much done with that. Trim that. Okay. This is, once you get the hang of it, this is a pretty easy pattern to tie. So now I'm looking at how much I have in front how much I have in back. And I'm going to pull out enough that I can grab what tag end and use that for the next fly. And then I'm going to very carefully kind of adjust that cut to what I think is about where the other one is and cut it. And I didn't do a very good job of estimating because this one's a little, but if you look at it, I got my blood sac on top, and down at the bottom, here is where you can use your picker tool. I'm just going to try and spread that out a little bit. And because that foam is pretty tactile, you can pick that out pretty easily. I think even Alan can tie this one.
No chance. I've been trying 7 years to tie it.
I still have a little bit on the bottom.
Yeah, it looks pretty bad.
Don't hold back.
But now,
That's disgusting.
if your if your egg is not perfectly round, it's very easy to trim. I would caution you trim less, not more, because you can always go back and trim a little bit more. If you trim too much the first time, you're screwed. So I've got a little bit of fuzz there. I'm going to try and trim some of this off. Get it a little bit rounder. And you can tell, you can manipulate this with your fingers. You don't have a lot of clearance underneath on a size 12 hook. But you can tell we've pretty well covered up the red thread on the bottom. And that is a McFly egg pattern.
McFly Foam Yarn Egg Pattern. Materials and tools. Hoook, Scud size 12 or 14. Thread, 6/0 red or white. McFly Foam Egg Yarn, 2 colors for primary and blood sac, your choice. Egg Yarn Dispenser, modified retractable ballpoint pen tip section. Egg Yarn Threader, 12 to 15 lb test monofilament loop tool. Scissors, be sure they are sharp. Preparing the McFly Foam Yarn and Dispenser. 1. Separate McFly Foam Yarn into 1 1/2 or 2 strands of your primary color. 2. Separate McFly Foam Yarn into about 1/2 of a strand of blood sac color. 3. Place both colors of yarn strands together, stretching each segment. Roll the blood sac section with fingertips to condense, keep this segment in a straight line onto the primary color segments. 4. Slip mono loop through the small end of the pen dispenser tool. 5. Place loop over trip of the prepared McFly foam yarn strands, then carefully pull to spool strands through dispenser and out the small tip end. 6. Adjust strand tips to avoid excess waste, then trim ends neatly to about 1/8 of an inch, depending on hook size, then set aside. Tying steps. 1. Lay thread base from hook eye to midpoint of hook shank, then let bobbin hang at the middle of the thread base. 2. Lay McFly foam yarn dispenser tip on top of hook shank with blood sac on top. Secure the bundle at the dispenser tip with 2 or 3 wraps, making sure that each wrap is exactly on top of the other wraps. 3. Make 2 or 3 thread wraps under and behind McFly foam yarn. Repeat in front of and under McFly foam yarn. Then wrap thread forward to hook eye. Whip finish and trim excess. 4. Grasp McFly foam yarn dispenser and pull tight, then trim bundle so that both bundles match in size and shape. 5. Fluff egg ball with fingertips into a round fluffy egg shape. Use dauber point to tweak shape if necessary. Trim excess with scissors if need be.